Good morning, afternoon, evening. Welcome to another edition of the best DFS show that just happens to start at 8 Eastern Standard Time. I'm coming at you a little bit earlier today. I have some pretty exciting news in my life. I'm actually getting real life internet today, so hopefully that all works out and I get to come at you in high definition from now on. But without really any further ado, today is about the EPL slate tomorrow and Saturday morning. Obviously, this morning is the 26th, but we're talking about the slate that will be on the 27th of this month tomorrow morning. So I'm really excited for what it's going to bring. Most importantly, what's really most exciting about this slate is that we're getting a Liverpool slate where they aren't at the very end of they're in the late game. They're at the late hammer. Consistently, the late hammer games are usually reserved for teams that are in cup ties and have games rearranged because of the previous games being canceled and moved. So it's pretty exciting we get a Liverpool game here where we don't have to worry and don't have to be concerned about who we have to start and worry about pivoting because it's all going to take place right away. So yeah, without really any further ado, let's right away jump into it. As always, do up the screen share. Perfect. So let's take a quick look at the schedule. Excuse me. We have Wolves traveling to Brighton, which should be a really interesting game. We have Bournemouth traveling to Fulham, which should be an even more interesting game, considering Fulham are easily the worst defense in the entire league. We have Cardiff traveling to Liverpool, which is another incredibly interesting game, incredibly interesting, because we have Cardiff, who's just as bad, Fulham at defense, except playing a team like Liverpool, who should absolutely smash this slate. Newcastle's traveling to Southampton, should be a really boring game all around. Huddersfield travels to Watford. That's kind of a walking clean sheet bonus for Watford. And then the final game, the late hammer game, we have the Hammers, West Ham United traveling to Leicester to take on the Foxes in Leicester City. So right away, yeah, let's just break right into this slate. I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's Friday morning and I want to go to bed. I think everyone wants to start their weekend off right too. So let's not waste any time here. Right away, Wolves at Brighton. So what we always know about here, Wolves had kind of an outlier last slate where they let in more goals than they usually did, which was 2 goals. And while that may not sound like a whole lot, one of the big issues about last game was Watford didn't end up taking many shots. So that's usually the saving grace for Rio Patricio if he happens to let in a goal. He's usually making 3 to 5 saves most slate. So that was pretty brutal. I had him in cash. It didn't end up as the worst thing in the world, but in terms of GPP, it kind of ruined any chance you had of taking down. It absolutely killed it. Yeah, this slate at only 4.9, you can quickly jump back onto the Wolves train, the Rio Patricio train. Absolutely. He doesn't really have as many stacking options on defense. I'll talk about that very quickly. But in terms of Brighton, again, like every Wolves game carries the narrative of being a really low-scoring game where either teams may not even score a goal. So immediately you can carry the hope that every opponent of Wolves could get a clean sheet. And that makes Matt Ryan a half-decent GPP option. 4.7K is a little bit more expensive than I'm looking to pay for Brighton. But on a whole, in terms of this game script, it should be a really low-scoring game, so you can usually target the keepers for a potential clean sheet bonus. And I do like that this slate in this game for sure, though I would definitely suggest it on the Wolves side before Brighton. In terms of defender, like I was saying, Wolves are pretty expensive at the moment, and while I would give some credence to Johnny at 5.1K, I think you can get away with that in either format. It isn't really a cash play, and Doherty's just too expensive. Like, the reason these guys are so expensive is, one, the amount of clean sheets they pile up, but two, they score goals, and they've recently scored a goal. And if you look at their crosses, they aren't crossing the ball enough. And honestly, neither of them play in like a role for the team, which would warrant any kind of cash exposure. So again, I guess you could always go with this in GPP if you really wanted to chase that. But that's a lot of salary to play on a Wolves team where honestly you can just take Rio Patricio and have just as much upside with much cheaper defenders chasing clean sheets in other games. Because in terms of the Wolves defenders, they're just too expensive. Plain and simple about plain and simply, especially either like if you want to spend this much 5.7K, literally every single person above Doherty is a better play, and practically I don't want to say everyone, but like literally Firmino, Bertrand, and Chilwell could all give major upside in comparison to Doherty's salary. So I know him and Chilwell are the same, but we'll be talking about this a little bit later. Yeah, the big thing with Brighton right now, I'll finish up with Wolves here. In terms of their midfield, Moutinho's always going to be one of the safest routes to double-digit crosses and double-digit points most games. His issue is obviously ceiling. It's very rare that Wolves will score more than a goal, let alone more than 2 goals. So Moutinho will never really hit a true ceiling of 20, 25, 30 fantasy points because his team isn't putting the ball in the net enough times to really warrant any kind of serious upside. So while it was great when he was like 5.5 and it was okay when he was 6.5, but now that he's over 7K, it's really hard for me to justify that for where like I know he doesn't have any upside. That's the real issue here. We're going to take a look at a bunch of different cash options for midfield, and every single one of them have a really serious upside, where Martinez is absolutely capped on the fact that Wolves don't score enough goals. Will they win a game 1-0? Yes, absolutely, more times than not, and that's great for Rio Patricio, but it's not good for players that you're looking to build a potential ceiling with from a floor. And conversely, the same thing could be said about Jimenez. The problem with that is obviously Jimenez scores and is involved in the vast majority of the goals for Wolves. So if anything is happening, it's like a 60% chance Jimenez is going to be in on the goal. And that's a half-decent salary at 8.8K. That's a little bit too expensive for me because, again, we're looking at 1 goal max probably, and like 2 the absolute highest ceiling. So it just isn't a place to attack or to use the attackers in. But conversely on Brighton, like I was saying, Matt Ryan, excuse me, is okay from 4.7K just because it's a low-scoring game. There isn't really any defensive options. Montoya is one of their big problems is honestly minutes, so you never really know who's going to start. Bong is the captain, so you can kind of expect he's going to start, but he's coming back from injury and international, so like he's definitely not in shape, and he wasn't playing a full 90 minutes. I don't know why. I know he came off the field. Who was it that came? Maybe it was Bernardo that came off the field? No. Who? Interesting. Yeah. Basically, yeah, so I'll take that back. Then he still doesn't have any serious stacking options for GPP, and there's no real floor plays and no real salary breaks. Like again, it was good whenever the wingbacks here were 3.5 and 3.8, but now that they're above 4K, it's a little bit unsustainable. Now going into the midfield. This is tough. Like, obviously, I think Knockhart is a really good GPP option this slate. A lot of that has to do with his preferable floor that he already has. Now, the issue with this is Brighton are without Glenn Murray for potentially the foreseeable future, probably until the new year, if not potentially the rest of the season. If anyone missed what happened last game, he collided heads with Ferdinand on Newcastle and was out cold. Literally on the they had to rush an ambulance on the field and take him to the hospital. It was a really scary situation, and the game didn't really get going after that. So I'm pretty sure he's still in the hospital right now. I'm not 100% sure on that, but he was definitely in the hospital for a few days there. There's no reason he has a questionable. He should be out. Now, obviously, I'm recording this quite early in the morning, and it's usually another, I would say 2 or 3 hours before information comes out on the press conferences and stuff like that. But Knockhart's definitely someone you can use in GPP. I would say cash normally, but without Murray, it's really tough to know how Brighton are going to go about scoring goals this slate. So they could just as easily be a walking clean sheet because this game is already noted to be so low scoring. It could just very well easily be Brighton don't score a goal without Glenn Murray, and this is the beginning of that trend. Now, I still do like Jen Agablash on Brighton. I think, honestly, he's one of my favorite GPP plays of the slate. I don't. There's two parts to that. It's not. I shouldn't say he's one of my favorite. He's definitely one of the sneakiest plays of the slate, in my opinion. Wolves do keep games low. Everyone knows this. We're already through that. But they looked really bad last slate, like really bad. And in all honesty, I don't know how the score wasn't far worse than 2-0. Should have been 4 or 5-0. So I'm not going to buy into this yet, but in the case that Wolves are actually floundering a little bit here after the international break, it very easily could come at the hands of Jen Agablash. Now, if you're unfamiliar with him, he is, I want to say, Iranian. I'm pretty sure he's the Iranian national. He basically got Iran to the World Cup this past summer. So he played an isolated role up front for Iran in the World Cup as their lone striker. And don't sleep on him. That's all I'm going to say. Like, if there's one person this slate that I think everyone's going to be sleeping on, it's a Jen Balash. And I'm not even saying it right, and I don't even mind because I'm from the most remote corner of Canada, so I can't really feel too bad about mispronouncing a name like that. In terms of a scoreline here, I'm going to say 2-0 Wolves. I'm buying into the notion here that Brighton are going to be suffering without Glenn Murray, and they won't find the back of the net in an already low-scoring game. And Wolves will find it twice. I'm not sure. I'm not going to, like I said, though, I'm not really going to look at this game too far out of Rio Patricio and chasing this in cash or GPP, preferably cash. I think it doesn't have as much upside as I would like in GPP because if my notion is correct, like one of two things will have to happen. Either Rio Patricio will stand on his head, which is possible, or Brighton just won't show up at all and maybe put 2 shots on net total. And so while that's great and all, it's just not something I'm really necessarily looking to chase in either format when I'm looking at it that way. But that's why I'll just stick with it in cash and be confident in the low-scoring game and hopefully get a little bit of upside. But we can take a look at it over on FanDuel. Where are we here? There we go. Wolves of Brighton. So let's take a look first. Yeah, see, Rio Patricio is one of the more expensive keepers over here, which is justified and makes sense. Look how expensive. Like, Johnny's really expensive over here, and Doherty's cheaper, which is I find really interesting too. 8. 9. And then see, 6.5 is mad cheap, especially for GPP. If you're looking for someone, because he was already playing 90 minutes before Glenn Murray got hurt, so I have absolutely no problem with that. And Knockert's a little bit expensive again, but oh no! See, I feel super burned because last night I did go Knockert to Glenn Murray, and that's how I built a lot of my GPPs. And Knockert ended up not starting, and Glenn Murray ended up getting hurt. So, like, I feel burned about suggesting a Knockert to Jen Gabalash stack. But in terms of Brighton, I think they can be super sneaky because no one will be on them whatsoever, and they still have a couple goal upside from their salaries. With someone like Knockert, it would be very GPP scriptish. But yeah, I'm going to say 2-0 Wolves. That's my take on that. And load up Mario Patricio and DraftKings. Second game of the slate, we have Bournemouth traveling to London to play Fulham. Now, this game is incredibly interesting for a few reasons. Fulham have the worst defense, not only in the league, but after 9 weeks, they have one of the worst defenses in league history. So this is absolutely something to target. They're allowing crosses at a rate that by the end of the season will make Stoke look like a joke. And if anyone remembers playing DFS last season, basically one of the meta plays was take the wingbacks that are playing Stoke because they're going to get 8 crosses every single game. It doesn't matter how defensive minded these wingbacks were. They were getting 8 crosses no matter what. So I have absolutely no issue rolling with some Asmir Begovic and GPP, hoping on Fulham not showing up once more and struggling. I'm not confident enough to take it in cash, especially when you have the low-scoring game of Wolves and Liverpool waiting to be talked about next. But in GPP, I think Begovic makes a really interesting option, and Diego Rico makes a really interesting option in GPP as well, just because we know Fulham are going to be giving up so much. I think there's a lot of different places that we're going to be able to look on Bournemouth to find potential output. Now, Rico is a little bit expensive, and he does hinder your ability to spend up throughout the rest of your card. But in terms of a really low-owned sneaky option with a clean sheet upside, Diego Rico is absolutely on tap for me this slate. Yeah, in terms of go back to Wolves. If this is the first time you're watching, I generally like to keep a cash skeleton up as we go, just to get a good look at things. So yeah, I don't mind Begovic and GPP. Diego Rico works as well. It's tough to say who will be starting for. See, Chris Christie's supposed to be a really good cash play, but he just doesn't get enough minutes to end up getting any cash time. So yeah, it's tough. I want to play him, obviously. Even the slate against Bournemouth, I have absolutely no issue with that. But yeah, the big thing here now, especially for Bournemouth, is minutes. Junior Stanislas is slowly coming back from injury, and basically, as you can see, his minutes have been increasing. He is going to be playing 90 minutes. He is going to take over 100 exclusive set piece exposure, and he will take away from Ryan Fraser's production. The question is, how long away are we from that moment? Could he start and play 90 minutes? Yes, absolutely. And in doing so, 6.9K is probably too cheap for him. Now, am I absolutely chomping at the bit to build around this notion? No, I'm building around Ryan Fraser this slate. 100%. He's one of my favorite GPP and cash plays. Now, I am genuinely concerned about his minutes. They haven't been very good for a little bit now. Now, this was before the international break, and this was after the international break, and he was injured in the middle. So, like this may just be a slight blip in the radar due to the international break. But I'm more than willing to use this in GPP. It's probably my favorite GPP of the slate. I see all sorts of upside, but I see a little bit too much risk for cash, if I'm being 100% honest. His salary is a little bit too high for someone that could potentially come off at 77 minutes for Stanislas. And in doing so, that would absolutely ruin your cash slate. Like, you would be done from the salary. It doesn't matter how well everyone else did, because everyone else would be so highly owned. You're needing that kind of Ryan Fraser pivot to be what pays off. So yeah, I don't feel confident about it in cash, but GPP, I think you can stack Bournemouth to the 9s this slate. Even up front, yeah, again, Fulham have the worst defense in the league, so it's really hard not to look at either Callum Wilson or Joshua King. I would prefer, if I was choosing between the two, I would take Callum Wilson in cash, and I would take Joshua King in GPP. King has 4 goals in like 7 games, and Josh King is Callum Wilson is second in the league in points this season with like 4 goals and 3 assists or something like that. So I think he has a little bit more floor upside in terms of Wilson, has more floor upside in terms of a more rounded peripheral statistic game. But Josh King is just getting goals right now, and he's cheaper. So for GPP, I'm going to be rolling with a lot of Josh King, Ryan Fraser, Callum Wilson, Josh King. If Stanislas starts, absolutely just Wilson and King. Wilson and Fraser is probably my least favorite of the stack. though there's a lot to suggest that Wilson's the one that plays 90 minutes and King's the one that comes off most games. So it's kind of up in the air for me right now, but this is absolutely the game that you need exposure to, like 100%. Fulham are that bad and Bournemouth are that cheap that you need to get involved. Now, in terms of Fulham themselves, it's kind of hard to target them because, like I said, worst defense in the league, so not much to look at in terms of keeper. Chris Christie's definitely their best defensive option, and he rarely, if ever, plays. So, again, we're going to have to look past that. Ryan Sessegnon was great when he was 4.5 and 5.5 and even 6K, but 6.2, like, again, when you start getting above that 6K range, you're eating into what you potentially can do the rest of the way, especially in cash, especially with Liverpool, especially when you have the worst defense in the league. Now, I think there can be a lot said about Fulham needing to score to keep up in games, but in terms of they just haven't been scoring, like Schürrle's been their main goal scoring threat, and they've all been super long distance cranked up shots that like absolutely blow commentators' minds. But like, I'm not risking that 7.4 even in GPP. He'll need a lot more than just a goal to pay off from that. And yeah, sure, against Arsenal he did okay. But like outside of that, we're just not getting the shots, consistent enough shots to really warrant that against a team like Bournemouth. Now, one of their bigger issues is Mitrovic. From February of last year until 3 weeks ago, he was basically the leading scorer in professional Europe, and now he's done nothing. So it's really tough to look at someone like Mitrovic. I had him in season long and I sold him this late. So hey, maybe this is the time to get back involved. I usually get those buy low, sell highs. I get them wrong. So maybe this is the slate to jump back in Mitrovic, but I'm not interested personally. If I was to do anything in Bournemouth, it would be definitely Ryan Sessegnon, and he's too expensive for me. I think Sari lost most of his cross roll duty to Sessegnon. So yeah. 6.2 is just too expensive, plain and simple, for Sessegnon, no matter whatever potential upside you see happening. Now, in terms of FanDuel, Bournemouth Fulham. Yeah, see, 5K is a little bit more reasonable in FanDuel in terms of keeper. I think you can definitely get away with using Begovic, like I said, in the GPPs. Let's see what Diego Rico's at. Yeah, he's usually way underpriced on this site. Looks like they still have him now 5K, which is, I don't know, I think that's a little bit too cheap in a game that, like, because I know FanDuel doesn't price for crosses, but the chance creation that he should be getting in this game from only 5K, that's really hard for me to turn down. And in terms of midfield, see, 7.5K is way cheap. I like that. I like that a lot. And like we're almost guaranteed that David Brooks is coming off the field for either Stanislas or Ryan Fraser. So even if he does start, it's usually a pretty simple fade for me, despite him putting up really serviceable numbers, which were fairly goal dependent. But yeah. Yeah, I completely forgot about to talk about one of my favorite super value, super sneaky plays this slate. First, I want to explain the theory behind it. So, Jefferson Lerma has been playing incredible all season. Literally, since the moment he's put on a Bournemouth jersey, he's been really, really good. But obviously in DFS, that doesn't always equate itself to high scores in DFS. Now, he has been improving in the past few weeks. I think a floor of 6 points is even something to half rely on in cash. This slate, especially when you're looking to spend up and you need a salary relief. Now, the big thing for me here and why I'm comfortable using him in GPP is because Fulham's defense is so bad. It hits this level that I like to call the anything can happen stage. And once you hit the anything can happen stage, basically every single player that's on the field and has a pulse has immense attacking output upside. Like everyone has a ceiling because the other team is just so bad at something that anything can happen. And Bournemouth are definitely at that stage this slate. Now, if I've felt anything from the moment last week kicked off to all the hockey slates and Champions League and everything this week. Tuesday was pretty chalky, but everything is outside of Tuesday has been like ultra off chalk. And the Penguins, I guess last night scoring 9 goals, but like the second lines in hockey have been doing a lot of damage, and I'm not going to get too deep into this. I don't want to spend more time because it's just the narrative I'm chasing. Fulham are so bad, anything can happen. And I like Jefferson Lerma in either format this slate. There, I got it all out. I think a lot of people will be looking to jump up the salary. And yeah, if you're new to my videos, something I look for a lot in DFS is massive salary drops. That's usually an indication that there's a salary leak in the lower end of that drop at the bottom of that cliff. It's in a situation where there's upside to be had. So yeah, I'm all about Lerma, especially on FanDuel, where at only 6.5K, that could really pay off in GPP. And he's not even doing that badly from his pay range, from his salary range in terms of production. So I used him in cash last slate, actually, and it really paid off. I was able to afford some different things, and he still did pretty serviceable. So that's the thing here is like, you're not going to, this is really steady. Like, I know it's not going to completely break you a slate, but it's going to allow you to get to places that will break a slate. And in terms of how bad Fulham are, I think that could really open up some really crazy options this slate, especially in terms of game stacks, because I don't think it's breaking news that Fulham are so bad that a lot of people may just stack Bournemouth like they would Liverpool. And in doing so, you're going to need an extra player to kind of offset that ownership. And Lerma is 100% that guy for me this late. So, yeah, I'm going to say 3-1 Bournemouth. Callum Wilson and Josh King are involved in all 3 goals combined. So yeah, I really like this slate. I like the Bournemouth in this slate, excuse me. I think they're going to be super sneaky compared to the Liverpool ownership and offer just as much upside against a completely garbage Fulham side. So yeah, 3-1 Bournemouth. Next game of the slate, we have Cardiff traveling to Liverpool. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this just because it's pretty straightforward. Cardiff had the second worst defense in the league. If they didn't beat Fulham 4-2 last slate, they would have the worst defense in the league. Both teams were tied. So again, this is just a Liverpool smash slate, and we have the absolute luxury of knowing ahead of time who's starting. So for the most part, this slate, I'm really only using Allison and Rio Patricio. I don't want to wander too far outside of my keepers between those two. I think Foster and Begovic have a little bit of warrant, but outside of that, I'm going to be sticking fairly close. And especially for cash, I'm just going to be rolling with Allison because it's the safest win, safest clean sheet upside, and I don't really need the saves. I just need the points and the walk. Now, in terms of here's my Liverpool take. My takes have been on this week, so I'm not sitting here bragging, but I totally am bragging. I'm not going to even pretend or be oblivious to the fact. Liverpool have, especially defensively, not offensively, but defensively, Liverpool have not been living up to their salaries. Now, Trent Alexander-Arnold is about to break 7K here, and he has only broke double digits once in the past 5 games, twice in the past 5 games, and even then it was barely double digits. And one of the big issues, I think, for me is the lack of mass crosses he's putting out. Now, when I say that, you only have to look up one more to see exactly what I'm talking about. Like, why are you taking Trent Alexander-Arnold's 6 crosses in cash when you can have 12 from Holobos for literally 200 more? Now, I'll talk about Holobos here in a minute. He isn't Jesus reborn or something. He comes with risk. But, like, The defensive aspect of Liverpool isn't packing their punch right now, and especially what's happened is that they've gotten so many clean sheets that the defenders are just so exorbitantly priced that it doesn't make sense to take them anymore. Even Robinson, like he's put in what, 2 crosses? Like this just isn't the kind of floor you need from someone that's getting a clean sheet, playing 90 minutes and dominating games. Like you need, like I said, you need close to Holobos numbers. So if that's not happening, you have to move on. And I know a lot of people are going to be on this, but like that just eats your salary. You can't afford anything after that. Go ahead and take 3 other Lermas, and you're still not going to be able to afford Salah. So it just makes no sense to take anyone from Liverpool with Alisson. It would make more sense to take to chase a clean sheet on Wolves than it would on Liverpool, because it's basically a full $1,000, almost $2,000 less in some cases. So I just have no interest in the Liverpool defensive partnership between Alexander-Arnold and Robinson, and even their center backs are way too expensive, like 4.4K for Van Dijk, who's literally done nothing other than get 3 to 6 fantasy points all season. Is like absurd. Most low end wing backs are 4.4, and we're looking at a floor of like 7 fantasy points from them. Like tops, I should say, to a floor and ceiling of 7 fantasy points. Someone like Hadagajan comes to mind. There's no reason to pay 5K for Joe Gomez, even playing as a right back. Like he's still what? Like, no, I'm sorry, it's just not on. If you want to, go ahead, but it's not on for me. Where I'm going to be focusing my attention for Liverpool this slate is absolutely on James Milner. Now, he may not start, but again, like I said, we get the luxury of knowing this before the late hammer, and we can adjust everything and build before lock. So I'm really excited about this. Milner hasn't played for a couple games. They didn't really need him last slate, and before that, or last slate, I should say, in the Champions League midweek, and last weekend, they didn't use him so they could use him this week, midweek, and they didn't end up using him. So I very much expect him to play a full 90 minutes, especially with the likelihood that Henderson's out and Naby Keita shouldn't be back yet. Alexander-Arnold's out. So it could be Fabinho, could be Wijnaldum, but I really do see Milner getting 90 minutes this slate. And basically, you're going to have to play Salah. I'm not going to lie, it's a little bit unfortunate. He hasn't been shooting the ball as much as I prefer, like the 6+s. But like honestly, he's just scoring at such a rate now, it doesn't even matter. Take Salah in cash. If you're going to fade him in GPP, I don't mind it. Probably even pivoting to another Liverpool player like Sadio Mane at 9.8. I think that's a really good pivot for GPP. I'm really interested to see who they start as their center forward. I have a feeling it's going to be something random, and I have absolutely no information whatsoever to base this feeling off. It's just something that's been nagging me all week. This feels like a game where they would start Solanke or something like that. Like in the past, like they would start Danny Ings in this slate. That's just what it feels like to me. So I don't see a normal Liverpool forward coming out. We're probably going to be really surprised, and we may have to spend down a little bit, even in cash, because, like I said, Cardiff are the worst of the worst this slate, and there isn't a target on their whole team. It's unfortunate, again, because everyone, if you're new, Junior Holy, it's Canadian like me, so I'm a big supporter of him, but like there's just no point in taking them this slate against Liverpool. They haven't allowed a home goal since February. If you really, really want to take a risk like that, just straight up go buy a lottery ticket. Like that's literally what you're doing, trying to pick a Cardiff goal scorer this slate. Could it happen? Sure, why not? Crazier things in life have happened, and Liverpool aren't going to keep goals out forever, but I just don't see it. Cardiff being Cardiff this week, mind you, not alone, just Cardiff being the team that does it. So we can take a quick look on FanDuel. So yeah, Alisson's most expensive. Way too expensive, especially in his range, just not paying off. But yeah, James Milner's way too cheap. He's a 9K player. 8.5K is a fairly sizable discount. Hopefully, all we can do is hope he gets to play. And honestly, this is going to be one of my favorite cash combos, is taking both James Milner and Salah if James Milner gets to start. Obviously, that kind of guts you for the rest of the way in terms of what you can do as your forwards. But if Salah's not a forward, there aren't really very many I like here outside of like the Bournemouth options. And because like Jimenez isn't scoring enough goals. So like, yeah, it's I'm not really worried about forwards on FanDuel. I think they're going to kind of play into themselves when we build the rest of the card, and we'll just go with what's there, and it will be script viable because everything else is already going to be so viable. So yeah, because like, especially on FanDuel, when you take someone like Salah and Milner, you're very defined to the script you can go with, but I still think it's a viable script that you can work around. I'm going to say 4-0 Liverpool minimum. They're going to beat Cardiff by 4 goals. I think it'll be 4-0 though, and that's where I'll be looking this slate. Most importantly though, probably my favorite play of the slate all around has to be James Milner, even at 8.2K. Next game on the slate is Newcastle traveling to Southampton. Now, if there was a game that at the end of the slate you faded in GPP, you could feel most safely about this one. Both teams are walking garbage. Not a lot of talent to go around, but unfortunately, they are lambasted in the middle with incredible cash options. Down the list, El Nasi at home is always a threat to put in double-digit crosses. I'm not looking at him this slate. A little bit too expensive at 7.2. Matt Ritchie's absolutely someone you're going to have in your cash exposures this slate. He's been picking up his game quite tremendously since especially since the international break. He's come back with an absolute bang. And just to drive this home, he's doing this without goals or assists. You got 22 fantasy points without a goal or an assist. Like, that is obscene. That's crazy output. Is that sustainable? No, that's probably his ceiling. But honestly, too, in the past, we've seen guys like someone I'll talk about here later, Aaron Cresswell, come absolutely out of nowhere and just start putting in double-digit crosses for 9 straight weeks, and it's just the thing, you know. So 6.5K is absolutely something I can chase around in GPP. I'd rather go down to Shelby if I was going to do anything for cash. I think that's far cheaper, far more safe, a little bit less upside, but at the same time, he's been putting up really good numbers. So yeah, I have absolutely no issue with Shelby or with Matt Ritchie. Basically, I would probably say cash or GPP. You know, I like them both, but probably my favorite. I want to say value, but it's not really value, but it's value, especially in terms of ownership. It's kind of getting old news by now. If you haven't heard, Pierre-Emile Holberg is one of the better cash options in the entire league. Basically, he has an incredible peripheral stat of floors. Now, what really drives home this slate for me with Holberg is Newcastle are easily the most errant of passing teams in the entire league. Basically, all they do is kick the ball up the field from their defenders to their forwards, hope their forward can hold on to the ball while the rest of their team catches up, and then the forward lays it off to someone and they do a run and score a goal. Now, what that means is that there isn't a lot of possession, a lot of kick and run, a lot of interceptions, a lot of clearances. You get where I'm going with this. Holberg's already had an incredible floor of that, and there's no reason to suggest whatsoever that he won't continue to put out a really excellent floor this slate, and potentially something even better than what we saw last slate at 12.3. So yeah, like I said, it's getting a little bit old news now. This isn't something that like we can sneak about anymore. People are picking up on the idea, but I have absolutely no issue with this cash. He's without question where I'll be looking to this slate. He's very reliable and only 5K. Newcastle definitely haven't done enough to suggest that Southampton, even at home, should be fearful for like preventing 2 goals. So yeah, we can there's no forwards looking either team. I'm not even going to talk about them. They could score a hat trick. It won't matter. They're not playing 90 minutes. Danny Ings is so foolishly expensive over here. I better look at him just because he is that expensive. Yeah, it's 80 minutes. Never mind. Like, maybe if he's getting 90 minutes again, but yeah, I'm not interested. Like, Muto would be interesting on Newcastle if he was getting 90 minutes as well, but he most certainly is not. So, yeah, I'll just be sticking to the midfielders here. And you can see El Nasi is more expensive, but yeah, Holberg down at 7K. Yeah, it's really hard to turn away someone like John Joe Shelby or Matt Ritchie at 7.5K. If you wanted to pivot down off the Milner a little bit, just stick with Salah. But yeah, I like that 7K with Holberg. I think that's really safe in mostly cash. I don't see Southampton having crazy upside, but they could. And if there was anyone that would be most involved and to benefit from that upside, it would definitely be Holberg at his 90-minute games because, like I said, both team strikers are coming off early. There's no point in taking them. I like 2-1 Southampton, maybe a 3-1 if they fall onto another goal lucky, but yeah, Holberg and cash. It's just the thing that's been going on, so you may as well keep buying into it now because his price still doesn't reflect how useful he has been. So yeah, like I said, 2-1 Southampton. Next game on the slate, we have Huddersfield traveling to Watford. So the very quick and simple about this is that we are heading into the 10th week of EPL action, and Huddersfield have scored 5 goals so far. So we don't really have to fear anything but a clean sheet bonus here. And Watford happen to have Ben Foster's a little bit expensive. I still like the safety of a win here. If there's anyone I'm using in cash, that's not Allison. And before Rio Patricio, if I can spend the money, I would definitely take Foster. I just found situations where I had to drop down to Rio Patricio. But Foster's just as safe as Allison and probably could see a few more goals. Now, the issue with Foster isn't necessarily Foster himself. It's his team and their ability to take a gazillion cards and take red cards and shoot themselves in their own foot. But in terms of cash this slate, the very first person you want to push in your slate is easily Holebas. No question. 7.1K still isn't expensive enough for what he does. A lot of this isn't even corners and set pieces. They're just open play crosses. The man's a madman. Get him into your cards. And what's extra awesome is that I'm hoping Firmino starts and not Navarro. Navarro's super, super defensive. If Navarro starts, fade him. Do not take Navarro. But if it's Firmino, chase the clean sheet here in GPP without question, because you know Holebas is going to be great. And if he gets a clean sheet on what he already does, then you're flying. Now, a lot needs to be said ahead of time about Holebas and his ability to take just as many fouls as he does crosses. He just finished serving a suspension for accumulation of yellow cards, which I think was the second player so far this season to have to serve that suspension. So needless to say, the guy's a loose cannon. He's going to take cards, but he's also going to put in double-digit crosses like the back of his hand. So there's no question here you should be rolling with Holebas and cash, and that only really drives home the point of not taking Liverpool defense in cash and just sticking with Holebas and seeing what you can work there. Now, in terms of going forward for Watford, I'm not as interested. A lot of this, again, has to do with what happened last slate and Decor popping up for 2 assists out of nowhere, and just like all the players that shouldn't have been doing things were doing things. And that's hugely problematic because all the players that should have been doing things weren't. And I was sitting there with a lot of really low scores on Watford while they're absolutely pumping Wolves. So I'm a little bit gun shy on Watford, especially with Troy Deeney not being at full health. It's just there's a lot of minutes that are going to be going up in air there with the attack. So if I'm looking anywhere in Watford, I definitely like their defensive abilities more than their offensive in this game. And Huddersfield aren't void themselves. I'm going to be looking past Losel and their defense. Again, I was talking about Hadagajong earlier. If you're looking for someone that's just going to do that like 3 to 5 fantasy points for something that won't cost you an arm and a leg, Hadagajong is the guy you want to roll with. Now, there are 2 more options here in Aaron Moy and Philip Billing. I don't mind either of them for cash or GPP, especially Aaron Moy. I think at 5.3K, maybe just as good as option as Holberg. The only problem is, much like Matinho, he has no upside because Huddersfield don't score goals. And Billings a kind of a poor man's knocker. He has incredible peripheral stats across the board. He usually has a really good floor, but again, just like Wolves, Huddersfield aren't putting up enough goals to chase the ceiling with in GPP. So in cash, you can definitely take Moy in this mix and just be tempered over your expectations for a ceiling, as long as you still get some interesting exposure to ceiling games where you still get a hand in the upside. You're okay taking Moy, but if you're jumping on Moy, just know that there's really a good chance that Huddersfield are getting shut out. Yeah, we can take a quick look here on FanDuel. See, this is just too cheap. Way too cheap. Way too cheap. Easily the play of the slate on FanDuel. And again, if you're no stranger to my videos, he absolutely leads my list on the erroneously mispriced players this slate for FanDuel. Use Ben Watford in either format as much as you can because Huddersfield, like I said, have only scored 5 goals so far this season. There's no reason to fear that. And that really allows you to spend up 2 Holobos and still get a really good shot at that clean sheet. Now, for another defender, you can just drop down anywhere in the list here and find a 4.5, 5K defender and rock with that and really be able to spend up at least 1 forward. But again, like we already talked about, there's not really any forwards to spend up for this slate. Like, unless you're looking to triple down a Liverpool stack and go with Firmino, you're better off just going with Callum Wilson or Josh King, and that's going to be like your heavy salary for your forward. And from there, it's like, well, who fits? Who are like, okay, let's finish our build. Who fits? Okay, well, this is what we'll be doing then. Like, so I still haven't gotten to my favorite game of the slate, the final game here. But yeah, in terms of Ben Watford on and Holobos both sites, get him into your cash card, your GPP card with the clean sheet bonus and waiting against Huddersfield. You don't know. Just know he could take cards. Like if he ends up with a red card, don't be that upset because it's Holobos and you bought into that potential whenever you took him. But on FanDuel, you got to get your hands on Ben Foster. I'm going to say a 2-0 Watford game and the most valuable clean sheet of the slate will definitely fall into the hands of Watford. Final game of the slate, we're here. West Ham traveling to Leicester. So the breakdown here is that West Ham are improving. There's no question. Like if there's one team that's on the up right now, it's West Ham. But that's basically by default because they were so bad. Previous to international break, they were treading water and like barely holding on. I like Fabianski in the sense that he's so cheap and he's making saves again. That's what he's known for is the large save count. Now, I wouldn't read too deeply against Tottenham. They were more content playing the Atletico Madrid style. Oh, we're up a goal. Let's just sit here with possession for 90 minutes than try and pressure Fabianski. But in terms of his salary, I really like that this slate. I'll talk about West Ham here first because this is the tough one. So for anyone who, again, if you're new to DFS and you haven't played the previous couple of years, Aaron Cresswell was basically the ultimate DFS option for – it was incredible. Neither site picked up on the fact that Aaron Cresswell was literally crossing the ball 15 times every single game, not even an exaggeration. And they were still pricing him down at like this range right now where we see the 4.6K to at most, I remember him being like 5.6, 5.71 slate. And so like he was like the instant just in cash, click Cresswell, just do it every slate, just do it, just do it. And we haven't really had the option to use him this much this season, but even when he did, he's still putting out cash viable numbers. Now, Musaku came back from international break tired, and that's why he didn't play. And the truth is he isn't in any way as good as a player as Cresswell. Now, what I want to do is use Cresswell in cash. This is what I want to do. But the issue is that he may not start for Musaku, and you can't use Musaku in cash. It's just no way. He's not putting up any kind of serviceable numbers. And there's even defenders from 4.4K and lower on teams that will have a better floor than him. So, like, you're kind of, if you take Cresswell in cash, you're absolutely cornering yourself. If you take him in GPP, you're fine because they're just like, whatever, I'll lose the 200 on Musaku and use him in GPP, and it's under the exact same premise. Now, what West Ham's main issue right now is this is their main midfield core right here, these three players. And without these three players, and Jack Wilshere too, sorry, those four, they're incredibly weak in the middle and will be fouling like crazy and will be playing catch up for most of the game. Now, I'll talk about Leicester in a second, which leads to there really isn't a lot to love here in terms of West Ham. Their minutes are shady. I'm hoping that Felipe Anderson will get back to 90-minute games now that who's out? Sorry, excuse me. Now that Wilshere is out as well, and like they're completely really shallow in terms of depth and who they can put on the field. Now, Cresswell and Masuku are it. Like, there's not anything else that's going to pop into that position where like any of these guys could go on for each other. Noble's the center midfielder, obviously, but like he's leading their center midfield core. Like they're just not good enough in the center of the park right now to keep up with Leicester. And I don't see West Ham putting them on, getting the ball forward enough, because that's usually what happens is that they struggle to get the ball forward and they're trying to go through Felipe Anderson on the right-hand side, and his crosses aren't finding anyone because all their forwards are 5'8", and then they're going on the left wing and trying to go through Snodgrass, but the problem is that he's slower than Cold Molasses, and so while he's taking lots of crosses, he's doing his thing, he has literally no upside because he can't get close enough to the net in time to score a goal. So like they're both probably coming off the field in the meantime for not scoring goals. So yeah, it's just really tough to chase this. The only guy I want to chase is Arnautovic, and I think even on FanDuel, this may be where a lot of people end up going in cash because he does have a decent floor throughout the season to chase, and he really is the end game for West Ham. I do have concerns over his health. He has a knee issue, so like that's more of a short-term concern. But yeah, I'm loving Leicester this slate. I'm not so keen on Schmeichel because Leicester just horrible at home at keeping clean sheets. Now, generally speaking, what Leicester do is they play Pereira as a right winger and Almardi as the right back. Now, Almardi is not an EPL caliber player, so basically what leads me back to West Ham and Aaron Cresswell being such an awesome play this slate is that they're going to be running at Almardi literally all game, and he's not going to be able to stop Cresswell from putting up double-digit crosses, plain and simple. Now, if Musaku ends up starting, you have to pivot down. At least if you're in GPP, you can know that he's going up against a weaker opponent in Almardi. But that's why I'm crazy about Cresswell. I'm trying to figure out a way to get Cresswell in and still be able to pivot around. You're going to need multiple players in order to properly do it. But yeah, see if you can get Cresswell in there because Almardi isn't going to be able to hold it. But you can use Chilwell in cash. You can even use Pereira. I'd prefer him in GPP because his minutes aren't as set, and he is more goal dependent in terms of needing points. But nobody under the age of 21 has played more minutes than Ben Chilwell this season. So very consistent, especially when he starts. You know he's not coming off the field. Has an excellent floor. If they do well, he will be a massive beneficiary through that, potentially through a clean sheet bonus. He isn't my favorite cash play, that's for sure. I have much more favorite options. But in terms of their midfield, James Masson's easily my favorite play of the slate, 100%. With West Ham being so beat up through the middle of the park, they should have absolutely no way of stopping James Mason from literally doing whatever he wants the entire game. Now, I think a lot of people are going to be looking at someone like Ryan Fraser, and my hope is that Stanislas comes on for either Fraser or comes on and takes away from Fraser, and Mason's just able to eat from 90 minutes with barely any ownership in the late hammer game, mind you, too. Now, by doing this, you're really hamstringing yourself pretty solid, especially if you're looking to get Salah into your cards. And in doing so, you're not going to be able to get Milner. You're going to have to choose. If you're going Salah, you're going to have to choose between Madison, Milner, or Fraser in cash. Now, it's a little bit different situation on FanDuel because Salah is only a midfielder over there. But in terms of over here, this is kind of what I'm relying on for the most part because, it's really hard to look away from this. What I may end up doing in some heads up is pivoting off Salah and just going with Milner and looking to spend up elsewhere. I'm waiting to see how the starting lineup comes out here and who's on the bench for Liverpool. If it looks like there's nobody to replace Milner, I may not even play Salah this slate. I may just strike it hard with Milner and go all in Milner and try and chase that floor and kind of ride that anything could happen wave because literally with such a horrible defensive core like Cardiff have, basically anything can happen. And this allows you to get real defenders and real forwards into your cards because with Salah instead of Milner and Masson, you're basically toast. But if you go Milner, this is just so much more viable to me. Like you can even take Allison and you're not completely ruining your day. You're making it harder, but you're not ruining it. Ben Foster stacks with that really well, and you're still saving lots of money. Like I was talking about, Rio Patricio. And like the real thing for me is like, excuse me, the salary scripting for DraftKings, look how far down Rio Patricio actually is. Look how many names he sits behind. And like, I know it's like, oh, we know they're not playing, so it really is important. But the way DraftKings bills their salaries makes this important. So like this many guys sitting in between him and Rio Patricio, between Allison and Rio Patricio, make him super viable. And then as long as you just don't spend up on the next defender, whatever direction you choose to go, maybe because then up front you're not making it easy. Obviously, you're going to have to spend down somewhere. I wanted to talk about Locadia mostly because he should be Glenn Murray's replacement up front. But really, what I'm looking to do this slate is going back to Brighton. Is a Jangle Bash up front here. Now, I know this leaves out a lot of Bournemouth, and chances are I will do a little bit of this and a little bit of this probably. Now, obviously, that's cheap. I'll have to rework some things, look around, but like that's tough, right? That's really tough because all three of these guys are straight real midfielders. I really thought I did that earlier last night. I must have been dreaming. Who did I use? How did I work that? Must went really cheap in defender here with something. Anyways, this isn't really the most viable of skeletons because of what you're left over. But yeah, in terms of the midfield core, like you're either going to have to go Salah or Salah and one 8K guy, or no Salah, and you can go 2 to 3 8K guys. And whole boss is the lock, though. That's really who you have to get into your cash cards this slate, and GPP. But I'm fading Jamie Vardy until he shows a little bit more life. Basically, that's just too much risk for me to jump onto for that salary this slate against West Ham, who, like I said, are on the up. So if there's anyone in Leicester that's doing it, it's absolutely James Mason, and I have no issue with him in either format. Even use him as your starter in GPP, and try and fill some Liverpool around him the best you can. But like I said, this is going to have to do a lot with the way Liverpool line up come Saturday morning, and we get it previous to the hammer. So don't make too many of your decisions until we see what Liverpool are doing, other than know that taking the Liverpool defense isn't really viable this slate because you want to take Holboss. But yeah, I guess we can take a quick look at the Leicester do up over here. We have a really I like FanDuel this slate a lot. I find FanDuel is way easier to build with. Especially whenever you want to get Salah and Milner into the same card. Now, obviously, I really like James Mason, and you can do this one of two ways. You can either go like that. I'm probably, like I said, I'm more inclined to do this as I was talking about DraftKings, because on FanDuel, it should open up a lot more doors, especially you can't afford an 8K defender. There are no 8K defenders. So even if you just take a random, we'll say don't take Sol Bamba, obviously, but that a 5K defender leaves you with 11K up front, which is lots of money to get a hold of lots of other viable options, even if we do something like that. Still 10K. And I'm not crazy about Danny Ings, obviously, but yeah, this again, a lot of my hope that Liverpool starts a random forward is for FanDuel, because if we can get Solanke down there, that's cash viable at 6.5K. I'm half interested to see what Watford plan on doing if they start Isaac Success again at only 6K. We may even have to use this in cash just to have someone to use down in the cheapies because there aren't many options. But yeah, where's Brighton? Yeah. See, like, if theoretically, I know I'm saying this theoretically, obviously, if Liverpool started Solanke, like that would open up basically we wouldn't want to take Olberg there. We want to go back to Salah and maybe even three stack Liverpool here. So yeah, that's just spitballing. I'm not expecting Liverpool to start that, but that's why I'm hoping it. Like, to be 100% frank, we're lacking serious value this slate outside of like the DraftKings 5K guys that I talked about, like Holberg and stuff. So we're going to have to find value somewhere, especially the forwards on FanDuel. We're going to have to take someone cheap there because the expensive guys just aren't as viable. So yeah, that's really the slate breakdown. Sorry if I droned on there at all. But yeah, like I talked about, I'm really excited. Today's a pretty special day. I'm getting real-life adult high-speed internet, so hopefully I'll be coming at you with high definition from now on. I'll be able to watch things in high definition, which has never been possible before. I've never watched high definition on the internet at home, so it's too laggy. It was never good enough speed, so I'm really excited for this. So it's going to be a big day, a long time. So thanks a lot for tuning in. RotoPros.com. Get in, check us out. Rad Rob Diamond on Twitter. Like, subscribe, comment. I'll have everything timestamped below in the basic info. So if you want to see any of the games and review later, they should be there for you. Hit me up on Twitter, Sir Robert 6 on the main sites. I'm trying to think when we're going to be back again probably next week for some NHL. Champions League doesn't start for another couple weeks. The second or I guess I should say the first full week of November. I think it's November 6th is the next Champions League action. So good luck tomorrow. Don't forget about Holboss and don't forget about Bournemouth because they're going to be what you want to get in with your Liverpool tomorrow morning. So thanks all for tuning in. Good luck, everyone. Take care. Much love.